Cougar Sports Saturday.
It's complete. Another touchdown!
Cougar Sports Saturday. A presentation of KSL Sports.
Left wing for three. He got it again!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Here are your hosts, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday here on KSL News Radio. It's the off season, but it never feels like there's a shortage of things to talk about. And to talk football, even though it's the off season, is former quarterback, former broadcaster, Riley Nelson. Riley, thanks for spending the time, man. Appreciate it.
Happy to be on. And off season is a term I think expired sometime around 2002. Maybe 2007, but yeah, there is no off season, baby. This is year round.
I wanted to start, actually, it's funny you bring that up by asking you how critical this time of year is for Jake and the offense to get ready for the fall season.
Yeah, so, well, for him personally and as a quarterback, you're laying the groundwork. As much as we want to say, like, making adjustments in season, you can make strategic adjustments, but at least as far as a quarterback and his ability, his mechanics, and there's a term out there, automaticity. It's also kind of like muscle memory, but automaticity it's not just muscle and your physical movements. It's also decision-making patterns. And right now, that's where he is retraining both his thought and decision-making patterns in the film room, and then also on field. A lot of people think that the offseason, because it's what plays on Instagram, right? It doesn't, an Instagram reel of a dude sitting in a film room and going through film and getting up on the whiteboard and talking about different concepts and how we would approach it differently versus different defenses doesn't quite get the views that the on-field work stuff does. But honestly, once 4th of July rolls around, then that is the version of Jake Retzlaff that we're actually going to see in the fall, because anything that comes new after that is likely not going to have the time to be ingrained as part of his automatic thought processes and mechanics regimen. So this is absolutely vital for him personally. And then as far as an offense goes, you got to be sensitive as the leader of that offense. You want to be sensitive because you can run your guys into the ground and you want your guys being fresh, but here we are still in May. Like, honestly, you can go pretty heavy on these guys as far as them running routes for you and getting them out on the field and the mileage that they're logging as wide receivers. You're still at the point where you can get them pretty high volume. Once we get into, kind of 4th of July weekend, you want to call off the dogs and let those guys start thinking about getting more fresh. So, I mean, May and June is where a quarterback, that's where if you're a pro, that's where your money's made. And in college, to be a potential pro, that's where your money's made too, because May and June, outside of spring ball and fall camp, are your absolute most vital and difference-making months for a quarterback.
Jake's a senior. He's the unquestioned starting quarterback. And it reminded me of your senior year a little bit, where you were the unquestioned starting quarterback going into that season. When you think back to that time as the leader of the team in the summer, how big of a difference does it make knowing that you're the guy and I have a significant part from a leadership perspective in shaping this team and setting goals and all those things? Just how different is it knowing that this is my team, I'm the guy, and I'm going to be largely responsible for our success offensively?
Yeah, I mean, entitlement is something that can be really ruinous. And from everything that we know about Jake, he's not going to buy into that entitlement. And so it was actually the most stressful offseason of my time at BYU, because so much will hinge on you and your leadership and your ability to orchestrate player-run practices and to rally the guys, to focus. Like, it's May, and to get those guys focused on a season that's going to kick off end of August, beginning of September, these are still 20 something, early 20s, late teens guys that you're trying to lead. Right. And for me, I wasn't on the older end. I got out on my mission a little bit early, and I was always kind of young for my grade, but still I was 22, 23 going into my senior year. You're still working with guys that you're going to need to produce for you on the field in the season in the fall that are 19 or 20. And so getting them to play the long view, that to see that what you do in May will echo into September, October, November, is harder than you think. And when it's all on your shoulders to rally those guys, to get them see that aspect of their development and to get them to really buy in May and June, that's, where much is given, much is required. And so, but that's what all of his experiences to this point have, his time at Golden West and his time, coming up through the ranks at BYU. And that's what all this has led to, is that he's, I have no doubts that he's prepared and handling it. But for me, the reason why I say it was stressful because I was constantly questioning, like, am I doing enough? Right. Cause I had not had an off season where I was the unquestioned. I had two where I was the year that in 2010, Jake and I were kind of in competition, and I was the senior, I was the upperclassman. So I kind of let out on more stuff, but I wasn't the unquestioned leader. And then the year after that, obviously roles were reversed. And, I got thrown in later. I took over as the backup, so I wasn't the leader in the clubhouse there. So it was my only season there. And the unsettling or stressful part for me was constantly worrying, am I doing enough? And then also striking that balance between keeping my guys like anxious, hungry, and productive, and not overworking them and burning them out, to where when I sent out the group text that we were going to throw or do one-on-ones or have a player run practice, that it was met with excitement on behalf of my teammates, and not, a groan that they were being led into more drudgery and more work that they weren't excited to participate in.
It's interesting to hear, Riley, just how much onus is on the quarterback from an off-season perspective to get the player run practices up and running and keeping people engaged.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, but I got to tell you, I'm getting further and further in the category of being an old man, in that, like, the staff, I'm pretty sure the staff is I'm not exaggerating. I'm pretty sure it's 3 times what it was back in, 2010, 11, and 12.
Right.
That's how much has progressed. And luckily, the P4 affiliation, Big 12 affiliation, all that has allowed for that. And that is all good things. So, I would, you say so much on the quarterback, what you hope as leaders, right? The best leaders are equipped with resources that are at their disposal, that when necessary they can delegate to help those things. So, like, where I'm talking about, literally, like, I had to go in and, like, make sure the IP, that we weren't going to get, compete with intramural soccer tournament. Yeah, like, compete with not even like our girls soccer or club soccer teams, right? Obviously there's competition there, but, like, in the summers they would have early morning, like, intramurals would use them, right? And I would have to, like, I was working with facilities and scheduling and things like that. And hopefully the staff is to the point that, well, and then the other thing was, if we were doing a player run practice, like, I'd have to come up with a schedule and the periods, and we'd have one assistant strength coach that would be out there, like, helping us with the periods and blowing the whistle, so we knew to move from one to the next. I would hope that, Jake's now, with the size of these staffs, that they've got someone helping that he can collaborate and delegate a practice plan to, and then the script for that practice. Like, I was out there, like, handwritten scripts with a paper folded, tucking it into my shorts, for, like, what were the schemes that we were going to do, what we were going to install, what we were going to work on. And I delegated to my center. Now, a lot of that stuff is the beauty of being a leader, and, like, you coming up with the actual practice plan and the installs that you're going to run for the day. But I'm talking about, like, the actual having to put pen to paper and get printouts and getting copies ahead of time. I would hope that the staff's to a point where, like, Jake, and then, the leader of the O-line room, the leader of the RBs, being like, all right, we're going to work on these protections. And then the actual scripting and the practice planning of that stuff and getting that distributed amongst the team members could be something that was basically, what I'm saying is, like, hopefully that they're still owning all the strategy part of that. But when it comes to like actually going to the copier room and logging onto the computer and like doing that logistical
Right.
stuff, I could hope that could be delegated just for so that things are that much more efficient, that much more, because that not like the ownership and the strategy and the coming up with stuff. You actually have a lot of thoughts, especially as someone going into their senior season. You have a lot of thoughts and opinions about what can be worked on and what should be worked on. But it's the logistical part of getting the water to the end of the row that can sometimes add. The ownership part wasn't stressful. It was the logistical stuff that came along with the ownership. So I'm hoping with the increase in staff and resources and budget at BYU that Jake's able to delegate a lot of that stuff, which makes for more efficient practice time, more joy in the journey, and ultimately more, player and unit development.
Riley, two more things for you. Riley Nelson's been our guest here, talking some football here in the offseason, which, to your point, not much of an offseason. But you watched Jake last year like all of us. It was a good debut starting campaign for Jake, but there's things to improve on. What are some things that you think he needs to improve on to take this team to a higher level this season?
Short to intermediate passing game accuracy, and then accuracy and rhythm that comes along with it. I do think, look, for every quarterback, the run game is going to be your best friend. But if the defense gets to a point, which again to me it kind of stood out, that lull that they hit going into, they finally scored in the third quarter of that Arizona State game. I think that broke like an 8-quarter or 9-quarter stretch,
Right.
where the offense hadn't scored an offensive touchdown. That's that. Or I can't remember exactly what that streak
Yes,
was, but
because
there was
the Kansas game was right before that, where they were, and the Utah game too, where they're
yeah.
just not a lot of production.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Not getting the end zone and some things like that. But what I saw from Utah, what I saw from Arizona State, and I don't remember a ton what Kansas was doing defensively. I more just remember their offense was hot as a pistol that game. But like what Utah and Arizona State were doing is on early downs was like stacking the box, making it much more difficult. Well, if any time someone's stacking the box, that's where you got to go to your short to intermediate, essentially the run game that's built within the concepts of your pass game. And Jake, like a strong arm gives and it takes away, like the rhythm and the touch that is required. People think that your strong arm comes into play most often in your intermediate throws. So your throws, I'd say 8 to 28 yards is where your strong arm shows, because that's where you still got to put the ball on a line and you got to fit it within windows. So that's where you need strong arm and accuracy. In the intermediate, the reality is whether you're throwing the ball, 43 miles an hour or 53 miles an hour, that's not really going to make a difference from whether or not the defense is going to make a play on the ball. But what 43 to 53 is going to affect is two things: the accuracy of where you put that ball, meaning right shoulder, left shoulder, put it on his chin, put it in his body so he can protect it from a defender that's behind him and stuff like that. So it's gonna, and then just overall, just catchability, right? Like how easily is that ball coming into that receiver's catch radius that increases the likelihood of him, coming down with it, which often those short to intermediate passing games are contested catches or they're tight window catches. So that's the biggest thing that I want to see from him there. And then just continuing to mature. And this comes with the volume of reps, but continuing to mature in his decision-making capacity and his timeliness of risky plays. You never want to eliminate the timeliness of risky plays, but you want your experienced senior-driven quarterback to be able to pull the trigger on that risk when is appropriate. So those are the two biggest areas, and he can make incremental improvements in some other areas of his game, but those are the ones to me where I see he can make, take a real step forward that will make a noticeable difference on the production of this offense once the season begins.
Riley, last thing for you. BYU has a new AD. It's Brian Santiago. Was he around much when you played? And what do you think of the hire of elevating Brian to replace Tom?
Yeah, absolutely love Brian. I saw some I find it so interesting that in the day and age that we live in, he's at his introductory press conference, he's having to answer questions about detractors or people, and I didn't hear the actual question. I just saw the response after it where he said, "What I would say to people who are questioning, me taking this position." I was like, "Geez, introductory. This guy hasn't even made his first official act as an AD, and he's got people who are questioning him, like, what kind of world do we live in? But it is the nature that we live in. But he talked about his competitiveness, and he talked about mentorship and what BYU has helped him do is develop as a leader. But no, my experience with Brian were always awesome. Like he was, he's a round ball guy by nature. So like basketball was his first love. He spent more time with the basketball guys, but he still spent plenty of time with us. But I say that he's a basketball guy in that my most memorable interactions with Brian were like 3-point shooting competitions in the RB. Like
Nice.
when I go over and like hang out, we'd all be in the summer or whatever. I go be playing pickup, see some of the basketball guys doing their work, and Brian would be in there. And he would never hesitate to take anybody up on whether it's free throws or 3-point. I caught him at the time, like, because listen to some of the guys earlier, like Max and John Beck and those guys who were a few years earlier than me. Brian used to get out and like even challenge guys to one-on-one. But by the time I got there, he wasn't doing as much like live one-on-one stuff. It was more, but he was taking all comers, even still to this day. I know he's still taking all comers on a free throw 3-point, but everything I know of Brian, like I knew he was a fierce competitor. I know he talked about that. Even though it's a business leader and it's a leadership position within a church affiliate organization, like competitiveness matters. And especially if we are going to not just survive in this ever-changing landscape of power brokering and leverage and everything that's going on in Division I athletics, you want a guy who's competitive and hates to lose in that position. And that was never in a negative way with Brian. And then the second area where I've been able to get to know him is different events, golf, fundraising, community events, donor events at BYU. And I'm excited for Brian to take the helm. He was my odds-on favorite simply because of not only the length that he's been there and the familiarity that he has with everything that Tom was doing, but also like also his inherent traits and what he can bring to the table and helping continue on the good path that BYU's on and helping them excel and strive. So more than happy for Brian, happy for the athletic department, the university. And, I can't wait to see what moves he makes. So will they be absent of criticism? Of course not. He would be the first AD in the history of college sports if all of his moves went unquestioned and unheralded. But he's a tremendously smart guy, a competitive guy who loves BYU. And so I'm excited to see some of the moves that he takes that will just position BYU for even bigger and better things.
Riley, as always, thanks for the insight. Thanks for the breakdowns. Thanks for the time, man. We appreciate it.
Happy to be with you guys.